Hello, welcome to my Mystic Monologue. Um, in today's video, I'm following a bit of a different approach compared to the previous ones. Previously, I would prepare a couple of bullet points and then have a pretty free-form conversation about that monologue. Today, I basically just have a topic and I don't even know what I'm going to say. So this is going to be an interesting attempt for me. Um, and the topic is, yeah, the title of the video is Everyone is Struggling. So, this is something I realized recently, and it has changed my model of myself and of the world and of other people by quite a bit. So, I thought it's worth sharing this and also just to dive a bit into what I mean with that and what kind of implications and possible actions that has for me and for everyone, in my opinion. So, first of all, what do I mean with everyone is struggling? Uh, I want to give you a bit of a background here. So, if I think about myself and my life, I notice sort of a phenomenon, which is as follows. Um, at any given point in time, for example, right now, I'm at a certain stage in my life. Like, there are certain topics, like certain issues I'm dealing with. I have a professional life, I have a personal life, I have friends, I have skills, I have hobbies, there are things that I enjoy, things I need to deal with, like administrative stuff. And there's a whole bunch of spectrum of just things that I do in a given day, or like my attention is on them, things I need to do, things I want to do, stuff happening in my life. And it's at a certain stage. So if I look at those things, let's call them my interests. Um, if I look at my interests today and compare it with my interests from 5 years ago, it's like completely different. And actually, this can change week by week. Um, Maybe interests is not a good word because, like, for example, some of the administrative stuff I'm doing is not really, I'm not interested in it, but I'm dealing with it. So, um, responsibilities, or I'm not finding a good word. I'll just say things. That's true. So the point is, I'm at a certain stage in my life and I'm dealing with certain things. And through time, like my stage changes and hopefully I'll like evolve. So I like rise in stage, and I can definitely say that this is true for me compared to a year ago or 2 years ago. I'm a more mature person. I grew up. I evolved, and also kind of my interests changed. The things I spent my time on changed, and so that's just a phenomenon, right? That's just what happens. But now what I noticed is that no matter at which stage I'm at, I always have the feeling like I'm struggling with something. There are like things I need to do or I'm confronted with, and I don't know 100% how to tackle them. And the interesting thing is also that as I progress in like stages, if I evolve, like the things I'm dealing with, the things I'm struggling with evolve. So the challenges of today I'm facing are at a completely different level than the challenges of 5 years ago I'm confronted with. And maybe this is also kind of my age kicking in. Like I think like in your 20s and in your 30s, I mean there are certain developments you're going through, right? Your first job, you're finishing your education, find maybe a partner, you kind of develop a sense for what kind of friends you want to spend time with and so on. And that's a completely different stage than maybe in high school when like your peers are mostly a given. There are different like activities you're doing where you have peers, like sports group, your school. There, most people don't have their own job yet, and so on. But still, in high school, you're struggling, right? There's like maybe an annoying teacher that doesn't like you, or a subject that is difficult for you. But then you kind of unlock these stages as you go through life. For me, like one of the things I struggled with is like cooking for myself, or actually nurture, like feeding myself. And by now, I kind of figured this out for myself. Like I don't waste, or like I don't spend a lot of energy on solving this topic for myself compared to 5 years ago, where it was like I didn't know how can I feed myself. How does that work? How do you cook? How do I buy something or do I cook something for myself? What are the needs I have? And so in that regard, I evolved. I don't struggle with feeding myself anymore, but now I might struggle with choosing the right diet, like always eating in a very healthy way, in like a balanced way, and so on. So my struggle kind of evolved also. And it seems like that's a never ending game, right? Like, let's say I figure out the perfect diet and I'm able to keep it up. There will be another development that will like, there's like a next level to unlock. And it's like a hamster wheel, right? Why do I even go through this process when it never, like the principle of the process doesn't change, just the content changes. And there is a certain development, a certain growth, but the game is the same. uh, but that's fine for now. Like that's a realization I had, and I think there's a next step there. Like there's a bigger thing that transcends this game of evolving. um I'll figure that out. But for now I'll just concentrate on this fact or this observation, um which is that I guess most people have this experience where at any point in their life there are just some things that they are struggling with. um, and I used to judge people for struggling. I used to judge myself for struggling. I'm still judging myself for struggling. It's like, why do you struggle? Like, uh, don't be so weak. Just get it done, and you need to try harder. Um, but realizing that everyone is struggling and I'm struggling, no matter how far I am in my process, has given me some relaxation, like relief that struggling is just part of my growth. And also, on the other hand, it showed me that very often actually there's like a meta struggle where like I'm doubting myself because I'm struggling, and I start to struggle just for the sake of struggling. Like there's this thing of being a victim, and oh my god, my life is so difficult right now and everything is so hard. And while that might be true, it is just another loop you're adding if you're playing the victim story like that. And I'm often doing that, and I observed others are doing it as well. I cannot speak for others, it's just my observation. But I can say for myself that I do it for sure. um, so this kind of extra loop we're adding, or I'm adding, is just wasted energy. Like I'm creating another struggle on top of the struggles I'm already having, which is just unnecessary, right? It's just another loop that we go through. Um, and also, um, I often have this feeling that others are struggling less than I do. But there's this fundamental thing I think about comparing yourself to others is always, it's basically, it's not worthless, but it it needs to be extremely precise and taken with a grain of salt, because there are like a million parameters that make up our background and our experiences and who we are, and in this very moment we might react differently to something else, to something than in the next moment. So if we compare two persons at the same point in time, it's basically not a lot of data we're getting out of that. Like I might struggle with cooking for myself, and someone else might struggle with something completely else that for me is super simple. And it doesn't make any sense to judge me about struggling with cooking and judging the other person about, let's say, struggling with making YouTube videos. Uh, I don't struggle with making YouTube video anymore, but for the last few years I was struggling with it completely. I didn't manage to do any YouTube videos. Somehow, like a month or two ago, I just started it and it happened. Uh, so I think the learning here is that basically everyone is allowed to struggle with anything. There's no judgment in that. Um, for example, about cooking, of course, it's important for me to accept my self responsibility of feeding myself. Um, but it's like my self responsibility. If I don't cook for myself, even in 20 years, that's kind of my choice in a way. Um, and here is another, we're entering into another section that I wanted to talk about as well. It is kind of, everyone is struggling, yes, but how are you dealing with your struggles? And I would say this is a spectrum, and the spectrum goes from you're being a victim about it and up to you're completely in your self-responsibility. And it is the self-responsible thing to acknowledge that you're struggling. That's the first step. And the realization that everyone is struggling already gives you kind of the validation of acknowledging it. Like, I'm struggling, he's struggling, she's struggling, everyone's struggling. There's nothing wrong in that. But then what do we do with that struggle? Do we create more turmoil and like more loops of struggle? Or do we go and act self-responsibly? And this is the crucial point, I would say. Everyone is struggling, but how are they dealing with it? And that is not to say that, some people have a better support system than others. Some people have more resources available than others. It's not about comparison at all. You always have to, like, everyone is an individual, and you always need to consider your individual situation. Like, for example, I recently did the driver's license and I struggled a lot. Like, psychologically, it was such an immense pressure for me to drive the car in the driver's lesson. And I think somehow for me that was a bigger struggle than maybe for others. So again, the comparison element is just, I think the value of comparison can be, for example, you can be inspired. You can learn from approaches that others take. You can make your own adjustments. You can see what works for others, what doesn't. But there always needs to be the step of applying it to yourself. Comparing yourself to others also, yeah, I really would say it's the inspirational part. Like when I see others do something, for example, how they record their YouTube videos, it gives me some ideas and some inspiration, and that's great. But as soon as it turns into jealousy, or into they are good, I'm bad, or they are bad, I'm good, that's not helpful for anyone. So yeah, I think those were some points that are worth further developing, but yeah, those are some aspects of this topic of struggling that I think are worth talking about. And yeah, I'm happy about how this video turned out. I hope you liked it too, and I hope to catch you soon again.